Phedon, welcome back to Cooke Optics TV.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
We want to underscore again that we're coming to Chicago peacefully, but whether we're given permits or not, we're coming.
I'm just wondering how the relationship with Aaron Sorkin came about. What were your first conversations, and what was that relationship at the very beginning like?
I had worked with Stuart Besser, Aaron's producer, also on Molly's Game. He asked me to meet Aaron, and it was quite brief. Aaron said, "I'm going to rely very heavily on you for this, and this is my second film." It was a very different approach for me because we would bring in the actors, we would block, and then basically I would dictate the coverage to the script supervisor, and also, apply multiple cameras, which I typically don't do. Like with Mangold and Alexander, we're more specifically single camera driven in terms of, finding always the one right shot for a camera. It was a fairly tight schedule. It was, I think, 35 days. 60% of the movie approximately taking place in the courtroom, multiple players, of course, got to cover, not only the 7 defendants, it's not one defendant, it's 7.
At the defense table, Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, Dave Dellinger, Rennie Davis, Lee Weiner, John Freund, Tom Hayden, and Bobby Seale.
The judge, the jury, all the audience, the audience is very involved, the Black Panthers in the audience. So, it required multiple cameras, and I really had to be very efficient also because it was shot on location. I didn't have a lot of control. Nothing is on stage. So it was actually an abandoned church that we had in Paterson, New Jersey, that Shane Valentino, the production designer, had transformed into our courthouse. But it had huge bay windows that, went to a day exterior setting. So, and it was also in the winter, so I knew I'd have very short daylight hours.
I'm just wondering if we could just give us a, almost like, what kind of lighting you would use in your big softbox tents outside, and what was inside the courtroom as well.
I mean, I can tell you the lights that we have in there. I mean, it was a big softbox that sealed, first of all, it protected me from direct sunlight or clouds moving in and out and having, big variances in that space. It was really lit just through that box that I created, and that box functioned in a way where it was lined white. It was probably 30 feet high and 40 feet across and at least 12 feet deep. So I had enough space to take my units, which were Arri M40s, bouncing into that to create this softer ambience, not as a hard push. But I also had Arri Maxes in there, and I could also take the M40s and the M90s and spin them around and choose to come directly hard through the shutters of the window panels, because it was very dark wood inside the courtroom. I really like hitting the floor with hard light and hitting the judge's desk, I should say, and getting a lot of ambient light. And then in terms of fill, I was mostly passive. I would bring in T-bone 12 by diffusions or just bounce cards, and to bring a little bit back. I mean, I did want it kind of moody in there. And I did have practicals, these wall sconces and these nice opaque lighting fixtures that were spread out throughout the courtroom. And those, of course, I played warmer in tungsten. Depending on what I was doing with the exterior, I would play with the level of those practicals. So if I went for a moody, wintry, overcast, rainy day, then I did play those practicals up a little bit, so you feel it on the wood, on the reflections. Didn't really affect the skins too much.
The coverage and your explanation on how you did it's a great way to get an understanding of how to shoot dialogue-heavy scripts, and I think it's a great little tip for everybody. So yeah, thanks for that.
I mean, typically what's done is, if you have multiple cameras, you shoot a wide and a close. I don't really do that. I mean, I shoot multiple wides and then multiple closes at the same time. Because also, again, like for the atmosphere, you put on a longer lens and you're forced to be physically removed from the actors. You're also shooting through a lot more atmosphere, and it gets muddy. And the longer lens has just a different feel. Actually, Aaron said, "I like long lenses. Let's use long lenses." And of course I didn't, but he didn't really perceive it like we're not, because that's a nice thing about the expanded anamorphics and the large format, the way they fall off. So when you're up close, physically close, and even on a wider, it does still feel like a longer lens close up, but just with a wider field of view. The trial took place over 6 months. And I did want to show passage of time. It's not always indicated in the film what trial date we're on, but we had, I think, 14 days in the story where we're in separate story days in the courtroom. And I did want to assign a different look to each one of those and also alternate so the audience also perceives, this passage of time, especially since the editing is very nonlinear and we leave the courtroom often and come back to a different court date, or sometimes not even in chronological correct order. We'll come back to something earlier in the court or something.
So the different looks for different seasons?
Well, not so much. I mean, it went from September to February, but I did want to play also mood appropriate, assigning different moods and atmospheres to depending on what happened in the court one day, so that was kind of just instinctive choices I made based on the mood of the scene. And the more dramatic scenes would be played in a more winterly, cooler light with a rainy day outside. Then the opening day of a trial, I played it warmer, like with hard sun, because our defendants go in, it's almost, sort of a more optimistic initial going into this. We're getting the stage, we get to plead our case for, fighting against the war, and the whole world is watching, as it said in the movie. And so they start with, a higher energy and higher optimism. And, then it's, some very gruesome scenes in the courtroom, devastating moments. It seemed like, I should apply different looks. Again, and saving for the verdict, the last day there, I'm back to a little bit, as they stand and read out all the names of the defendants. I'm playing again the harder light. They're wearing their white prison outfits at that time, and they almost glow, like these the heroes,
Yeah, I liked the contrast. So you had your very cool, especially the moodier scenes, the cool light coming from outside, and complete contrast. Sometimes really you really push that far sometimes.
Yeah, I really wanted to make that a pretty strong statement, like that it's a very different mood. I didn't want the lighting situations to be too similar and get muddled. I really wanted to distinguish between the various days in court, because I knew the way it's happening in a non-linear fashion that otherwise it will all kind of just blend together as one look. So when Sacha Baron Cohen, for example, takes the stand, it's probably one of the more dramatic, moodier situations, because it also seems appropriate for his moment in the witness stand. And then the next one, it cuts without leaving the courtroom. It just goes to the verdict being read, the final courtroom day, and that's very much in contrast to Sacha's scene that immediately precedes it.
I'm concerned you have to think about it.
Give me a moment, would you, friend? I've never been on trial for my thoughts before.
So that's something, it was fun, but it was quite complicated because I had to block shoot. I couldn't complete the scene, because we didn't really have that many. We had, I think, 12 shoot days in the schedule for the courtroom, and some scenes are 16 pages and some scenes are 2 lines. Where I'm assigning a different look, and literally it's one Chicago cop saying, yeah, I met Abby on that day in the park, and then we cut, and then we come back and we're in a so I had to be able to change over the looks lighting wise very, very quickly, because I had to sometimes shoot 3-4 scenes in one direction. When I had extras, I didn't also always have extras. It was quite complicated to fill that space. It was almost too big for a movie, to have that many extras. That had to go through period hair and period wardrobe. Of course, this is set 69, 70. So it was we had to be very efficient, and therefore the coverage was kind of complicated and keeping track of everything. And luckily, our script supervisor Shane was very helpful. But really making sure I get all the coverage for Aaron, who is mostly interested in the person who's speaking. And besides that, you have to offer him things in addition, reactions and that. Therefore, I chose, again, the wider lensing, physically close, so I'm not isolating the character, and I can maintain the field of view that a wider lens gets, but still get an intimate close-up. So I would often, use a 40 or a 50, even for the close-ups, and just be physically close and try and get, because it's such a talking movie, I didn't really want just talking heads. I really wanted to, understand, because they function as a group, and their reactions to whenever somebody is in a witness stand it's very important for the story to always feel the group dynamics, and so the connectivity of the characters was very important.
Like you said, you block it out on the day. So you know what's going to be said, and what's going through your head in terms of, because obviously you've got to move fast. You've got multiple. You've got 3 cameras. You know that certain lines need to be emphasized. So therefore, sometimes this is really important. We want to be close with this character when they say it, or this is a medium shot. We're just building the scene up here. What was your methodology in terms of how you shot the dialogue?
I would make sure I set up the room in a series of wides that I tried to run simultaneously. I also didn't really want the actors to have to repeat it too many times, because some of their dialogues are really big chunks and a mouthful. And, of course, I had amazing actors and a great ensemble cast. And a lot of them, Eddie Redmayne and Mark Rylance, theater backgrounds, and theater director Mark Rylance, and Sacha Baron Cohen, writer, director, producer himself. So I really wanted to be very efficient, and not have to have them repeat performances too much. But I would start with a group of wider shots that connect people, and then move, typically like in 3 stages. I would move closer with all 3 cameras. In various angles, sometimes 90 degrees to another one. They weren't all just in line. And then I would, and try not to do too many takes on the wider shots. But then when we got in close, and then the third grouping would be really get tighter raking shots where we rack focuses, and then get tighter frontal close-ups on the individuals and the characters, with the most dialogue. And of course, the same with the judge, because it's always intercutting with the judge and the witness stand. So I would do those basic 3 groups in one direction towards the audience and the windows when I had the audience. And then when I would lose all the extras, I would turn around and, be over the defendants to the judge wide, and then slowly move in, get, medium or connective 2 shots between witness stand and judge, and then go in for singles of the witness stand and the judge Hoffman. And, then of course, I also had to get reaction shots of the jury, which was another group, kind of, they were against the wall with no extras in the background. So, that's why I had to recreate this lighting very often out of order, because I had to group these things, for other reasons, for not having extras in the background. So it became very complicated, this big elaborate spreadsheet, and and just making sure we get everything, and making sure Aaron had all the options.
Do you have an approach towards shooting dialogue scene with multiple characters? You've got these 16-page scenes, and you still got to keep it interesting. I was just wondering how you do that, and have you developed this kind of technique over time in other films, or was it different for this film?
But yeah, when it comes to dialogue, really trying to keep the characters connected and not isolate them, and create a field of view that I understand the surrounding, and I'm getting a lot of information from things that are happening other than the person talking. Try and find ways to have less coverage by having a character, by moving into a close-up rather than cutting to a close-up. Turning, creating a tight profile, racking, creating an over the shoulder, all in sort of one setup. So I'm always looking for this sort of connective tissue and maintain the integrity of the performance. And I mean, most of my inspiration for shooting comes, I'm really not that big on preconceiving too much of this, because there's all these things that happen on the day, and my greatest inspiration always has come from the performance. You kind of know where you got to be and where the camera has to be, and does it need to be slamming in on him, or a slow push in, or a fast rotation, or no move at all. It's all sort of dictated, I think, by the performance and by the looks, the eyes, and the physicality. Often, you see something and it's so much of the performance is body language. I mean, we will play things wider. I like the audience to be able to be selective in what and less manipulative from the filmmaker's part. Like, here's a close-up, here's a reaction. Now I'm cutting to this insert, now I'm cutting to this close-up, now I'm cutting to this person's reaction, where, you can take in a frame and as an audience, sort of make your choices of what you want to be observing and what you want to be noticing.
Baby, diffuse the situation, they will listen to you. Take the helm!
With the intercutting of archive footage with your footage back to archive footage, do you take reference to try and match some of the clips from the archive footage? Or
No, because we didn't really know the extent of the archival footage we were going to be using. I did re-watch Medium Cool. I mean, just because it's a perfect guide and for level of tear gas, how much atmosphere, how much fog should we apply, and of course, wardrobe props, and but also just the level of violence and the level of energy, and was a great guide for that. And so the instruction to my camera operators, Michael Fuchs and Alan, were to really treat those sequences like as if they were documentary filmmakers on the ground, and just emerge in the crowd, which also helped us with a limited crowd, but really just get in there. Again, similar approach to the way I cover action with Mangold, wide lenses, but physically close. I mean, we were hitting people with the matte box, and, it's not just sort of a removed point of view. I mean, it's the high energy that also contrasts to the court, which is much more static and composed, which helps with the overall pacing, and the pacing of the screenplay, of course, is very tight. And Aaron's scripts, they're lengthy. I think Molly's Game, I'd read that back then, it was 180, 200 pages. I mean, it just goes by like that, with overlapping dialogue. And it's very important that you photograph the film in a way where you can be true to that pacing.
So what are you working on next? I heard it involves a whip and a hat.
Yeah, I'm currently prepping Indiana Jones 5 that is going to be directed by James Mangold.
Mm-hmm. You're looking forward to working together again?
Very much so, and it does involve Harrison Ford. And we had worked with him because we had done reshoots on Call of the Wild. I guess we got along pretty well. He's a great guy, so I'm looking very much forward to that combination of Mangold, Ford, and I think it's going to be great fun.
We can do another one of these when the movie's out.
We can definitely do another one of these. I think it's going to be released, next year. Late summer, if we can get it finished. It's certainly not the easiest movie to make during COVID restrictions time, and quite challenging, as you can imagine. But we got a great crew assembled, and it'll be great fun.
All right, well, thank you for your time today, Phedon, and
my pleasure.
Let's catch up soon.
Same with you. Good luck with everything, and happy award season, and see you in London.